be pushing the concept of non-addictive painkillers very, very hard. We give away billions and billions of dollars a year, and we're going to be spending lots of money on coming up with a non-addictive solution.
Now, in this opioid epidemic, man-made drugs are causing a lot of problems. And if we really want to overcome that, we might want to take a step back and see what Mother Nature has to offer.
Is medical marijuana the answer to the opioid epidemic? It's legal in 29 states, including here in Florida, and a new report could bolster advocates' claims that legalizing medical marijuana could curb the nation's drug crisis.
I've had patients that since they have been using their vaporizers with cannabis, for example, they've decreased their use in Ambien, they've decreased their use on clonazepam, on Percocet.
You conclude that in certain cases, medical marijuana is even more effective than various pharmaceutical drugs, right?
Let's use marijuana as not a gateway into drugs, but a gateway away from them.
And you come to find that marijuana, in a percentage of patients, not only does it work better than these narcotics, it's much safer. Because on those narcotics, Wolf, you and I have talked about this, there's a death, an accidental overdose death from prescription medications every 19 minutes in this country. Those are dangerous medications. You know, they have a role, but they can be dangerous. Whereas with marijuana, I couldn't find a single confirmed overdose death. So you have something that works better, may work when other things don't, and probably much safer.
But aren't you treating an addiction with possibly a new addiction, though?
Yes, we are. We're treating an addiction that will kill you, an egregious, lethal addiction for a dependence on a product or on a substance that will not kill you.
Yet right now, it continues to be Schedule 1, which means they say that it's more dangerous than heroin and cocaine and has no medicinal value. Obviously, It seems like it has some.
We want to know what it's doing as much as anybody else wants to know it's doing. When people bring this up, their beef is not with me. Their beef is with the U.S. government for scheduling this substance as a Schedule 1 drug, which means we can't do clinical trials with it. We're relying on Israel for most of the information about what medical cannabis does and doesn't do.
By scheduling weed as a dangerous drug with no medical benefit, the government makes it extremely difficult to conduct research that would prove that marijuana is a not very dangerous drug with a wealth of medical benefits. For example, to study allegedly less dangerous Schedule 2 drugs, scientists the Schedule 2 drugs like cocaine or crystal meth, allegedly less dangerous, Schedule 2, to study these drugs, scientists just whip up some crystal meth and study it. But to study Schedule 1 marijuana, researchers must be pre-approved by the FDA, apply for government-grown marijuana from the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and be temporarily deputized by the DEA, as only federal agents are allowed to handle Schedule 1 narcotics. Add to this the fact that most funding for drug research comes from the pharmaceutical industry, which views weed as a threat and has a vested interest in keeping it labeled as a dangerous drug with no medical benefits. But as patients in 24 medical marijuana states can tell you, weed has a ton of medical benefits, from quashing nausea to minimizing arthritis pain to controlling seizure disorders.
Not to insult anyone's intelligence, but how many of you know that marijuana is still federally illegal, right? And more importantly, and more to the point, how many of you think it shouldn't be? That is not a surprise.
You know, the truth of the matter is there are people who are cannabis users who lead productive lives. Heroin and cannabis are not the same thing. A lot of the population that I see are 18 to 30-year-old men. So young adult, late adolescents, young adult men. If we can get them off heroin, booze, pills, etc. for 3 months, we're having a very different conversation with a very different person 90 days down the road if they're exclusively a medical cannabis user.
I know that there are a lot of Americans who were very afraid of the idea of legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana. We've been trained to be afraid from it for almost a century now. We've been programmed to be very fearful of it.
In 1930, the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics declared, and I quote, "Marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes and makes darkies think they're as good as white men."
I also looked closely at the DEA scheduling policy. They classify marijuana as a Schedule 1 substance, saying it's in the category of the most dangerous substances out there. And when I looked carefully at that, I found there was really no scientific evidence to say it was that dangerous, that it had high abuse potential, and that it had no medical applications. I believe it does have medical applications, and I just thought was an important message to get out there.
In the face of so many deaths at the hands of man-made pharmaceuticals, perhaps we should look to nature. Because eventually we're going to have to really live up to this land of the free, home of the brave thing. And accept the fact that sometimes nature knows better than we do.
Prescription painkillers kill 10,000 people a year, while no one in the history of the world has ever died from marijuana.